Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours. I'm Mark Schaefer, and today my very, very special guest is Martin Lindstrom. And Martin is a world-renowned consultant on branding and an author. And I was so privileged a few months ago, I got an advance copy of his new book, Small Data. I got it in the mail, took it on a plane with me, and could not put it down. If you love business and you love marketing, this is such a fun book to read. It's like marketing adventures. It's just an amazing, gripping book. We're going to talk about that today. Talk about how this can apply to businesses today. So, Martin, first of all, congratulations on the book launch. And how's the book launch going for you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. The book is doing incredibly well right now, I have to say. We are hitting all the lists. So we were number one yesterday on Barnes & Noble. I'm hitting Harry Potter and Rowling, which I was proud of. I immediately took a screenshot and will hang it on my wall when everything goes bad in my life. Besides that, yeah, we're hitting most of the shows here. We're doing a lot of National Public Radio, some TV stuff, Fortune, Forbes, all that stuff. And I have to say that the reviews has been extraordinary. I'm always prepared for the worst, I have to tell you. But in this case, it's become already now Book of the Year by Forbes, by Fortune, by Inc. magazine, FT, held it. So it's. I've been lucky. Let me put it this way: so I'm a happy man.
Well, it's just it's a great book. It's a gripping book, and like I said, it's almost like a marketing safari. You just have to read it to believe it. So. What I want to do is kind of set the stage for what you do and what's different about this book. And then let's talk about some of your adventures and talk about how we can apply some of these ideas to our world. So I wanted to read a passage from this book. So the whole idea is that, and the reason I love the book so much is because it talks about moving from big data really to small data, to find wisdom and insight in refrigerator magnets and in how people put their beds in a bedroom. And this is something I've been preaching on my blog for a long time. And I have a concern that we're becoming lazy marketers in some ways by relying on charts and graphs and big data, maybe already too much. So that's why I love this book. So Martin has this process called culture scans. It's kind of a sociological approach to marketing. And so he just embeds himself in people's lives, sometimes even living with them. And he writes, a clue could be inside an oven or a medicine cabinet or inside a Facebook album. It could be contained in a toothbrush holder in a bathroom in Tel Aviv, or in how a roll of toilet paper presses up against a bathroom wall in northern Brazil. A lone clue is almost never meaningful enough to build a case or create a hypothesis, but blended with other insights and observations gathered from around the world, the clues eventually come together to create a solution that forms the foundation of a future brand business. So I think it would be great to hear one of your favorite stories from the book. Put this in action for us. Give us one of these adventure stories to show what you really do. What is a culture scan?
Well, it's crazy. All of it is crazy when you look at it and when you read about it, because it seems so surreal. But I want to say one thing here first, Mark, before I tell you the story, that I've been visiting more than 2,000 consumers' homes, and in most cases living in them across 77 countries. So what happens is that I'm picking up what I call emotional DNA. It's not the nail and the footprint and all that stuff, which is the physical DNA. This is the emotional stuff. It's all the clues we leave behind ourselves. And what happens is when you've been to so many homes, you actually start to build up these strange skills where I kind of can look through walls. People think I'm crazy when I can tell you what color I think the walls are in the next bedroom, but I did. So this is really what it comes down to, and I wanted to frame it this way because when the reader joins me on my journey, we actually are starting the whole chapter in Saudi Arabia and in Russia, where again, crazy story, this billionaire Russian guy is calling me with this funny accent, and it's almost like a really bad Hollywood plot. And he says to me, if I would like to build a brand for him, I knew him from the past. I said, yes, sure. I said, what's the category? He said, I don't know. You have to find out. I said, what's the name of the company? I don't know. You have to find out. And what is the budget? You decide. And that was really the starting point. So he flew in this.
That's a good starting point.
I mean, he'll bring it on, right? So he flew this private jet into where I was, literally, and I jumped on board with my team. And we were sitting in the private jet for several weeks, flying across Siberia. I mean, Siberia is in its own right crazy. I mean, we flew an hour every day across all these cities in the coldest place on planet Earth. And after 7 days, we were half an hour flight away from Tokyo. I mean, this is how big it is. It's 7 time zones we went through, 7 hours. So we move into these consumers' homes, and we wanted to find out, how do you create a new business out of nothing? So as we spent time in the homes, I started to realize that these mothers in particular were placing the fridge magnets at a very low point on the fridges. And it's a clue, it's an insight which you normally wouldn't sort of think of. In fact, I didn't think about it for several days. But I noticed that each of those small fridge magnets had some very interesting stories. And they're all stories about people where they were happy in the past, or where they had enjoyment, or the hopes of the future. It was all about dreams frozen in a split second. But what I also noticed was that the fridge magnets were positioned very strangely. Anyway, freeze here for a second. Just hold your horses, because in the meantime, we're doing a job in Saudi Arabia. We asked to build the largest shopping mall in the world. And I tell you, that is big. Remember that the highest building in the world right now is in Dubai, which is a neighbor city to Saudi Arabia. So as I'm living with homes and consumers' homes across Saudi Arabia, living with women, which, by the way, is completely banned in Saudi Arabia. You are not allowed to be in a room with a woman unless you're married with her or her husband is present. So it was very hard to, first of all, get through all those hurdles legally. But secondly, it was just as difficult to basically interview women which are dressed in a burqa, where everything is black and you can't even see their faces. But as we were doing that, I noticed that it was so strange. As I drew into these homes, everything was wrapped in plastic. I mean, what was wrapped in plastic was the remote control, the seats in the car, everything. And the kids, as I walked into the homes, were playing with fire trucks at the entrance. Anyway, came into the homes. Again, I noticed the fridge magnets. They were at this stage at a higher position on the fridges. And I thought a lot about that. At that stage, I sort of said, there's something in it. So I learned that in Saudi Arabia, they have a lot of toys, and the kids can entertain themselves playing with all these toys. So basically, the fridge magnets was taken out of reach for the kids. But in Russia, they were very low position. In fact, that was the toys, because they couldn't afford, or they didn't have access to proper toys in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, in Russia, in Siberia. So that was really the small piece of insight we started to learn, that in fact, the parents wanted the kids to dream through these fridge magnets and have something to play with. And that was actually the second. I'm just fast forwarding a long process, which takes 3 weeks, for us to understand that we had to take dreams, encapsulate it, and build up a toy company which was selling dreams to the kids. And that became, at that later stage, a huge toy website in Russia. But in Saudi Arabia, we also learned that these remote controls wrapped in plastic was actually because they were afraid. And I asked them about, what is the fear you have? And they all said to me, I'm so afraid of kidnappings and driving alone with my driver in my car. Remember, no women is allowed to drive by themselves. And they also said to me, we're afraid of the whole malls burning down. And out of that, we learned from a wrapped remote control, we then learned, fear is controlling the mall. So we went back to our research study, learned that not one single mall had ever burned down in Saudi Arabia. And that was the second we knew. We have to build a mall which will be very successful. It has to be successful. We had to build rivers of water inside. We had to have rain simulated. We need to have a fire station in the entrance. We actually built that into the whole mall,
Wow.
which is in construction right now. So it gives you a sense of how these seemingly insignificant observations, small data, is actually creating huge constructions across the world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love the stories. And as I said, you need to check out the book because it's like an adventure book. If you love business and marketing, it's just one adventure after another. Talk a little bit about how does social media help you in creating brands and creating images today. You made a comment. There are several comments about social media weaved throughout your book. One comment in particular, you said that Facebook is the new bedroom wall.
Yeah.
And you also had some interesting observations about the discontinuity between what people post and what their true images, their true personalities are. So talk a little bit about how does social media data help you unearth truths that can help brands and businesses today?
Well, you have to remember that we all are a brand. And we all project an image to the world, typically how we would like to be seen as, or the emotions we would like to feel other people have when they interact with us. So the bedroom wall in the past, in particular for teens, were this perfect setup where you would place all the posters of your heroes, somewhat to be seen as being cool or sexy or exotic or whatever. But that bedroom wall has now been replaced by your Facebook page. And the Facebook page is not real. Don't be fooled. In fact, quite often when we look at Facebook pages, we realize that that is the perception of who you would like to be seen as. And this is important stuff because when you analyze people using the Facebook pages, you are also learning quite often that that is not something you should be fooled by. Now, have this in mind. What we then are looking at is how you would like to be perceived at and what your insecurity is. And I want to pause here for a second, Mark, because brands is all about identifying the imbalances we have in our lives. We all have imbalances. Societies is out of balance. You have certain societies like Syria, where it's completely out of balance. You have in the US, where we have an out of balance of fear. We're afraid. We're much more afraid than other cultures are in this country, or be very aware of how we come across to other people. Now, imbalances also exist on a very personal level. I mean, I may be too overweight. I may be very insecure. I may feel that I don't have enough friends. And all of that represents a gap. And that gap is really where a brand is living. So what you want to understand is, of course, when you look at people and their Facebook lives, what is it? What's a life where they're out of balance? And typically you'll see that if you have a little photo, your profile photo, and the person is not looking at you, so it's looking away from the camera, or you only see parts of the person, that person is actually very self-confident. Whereas if you take a selfie...
They're very self-confident?
They're very self-confident,
Very self-confident.
If they are on the other hand,
my new Facebook is going to be like this.
That you are so confident, it's not even funny.
What does it mean when they have their mouth open? I've always wondered about this. So many. Well, so many here. So I'd say at least 30% of avatars are like this.
Yeah.
It's like, close your mouth. I'm like, I'm freaking out. Just close your mouth.
Yeah,
so it is. I'm asking you, what does this mean?
Yeah. So first of all, no. Well, it's more the person actually would desperately like to come across as being open, come across as being engaging, and really want to be liked by people. So you actually see people who have open mouth have a bigger need to be liked by people than other people, because they want to express a feeling and they want to have a feedback from the audience saying, "Hey, you're cool, you're fun, I like you." So that's typically the correlations you see. Now, of course, remember this is taken completely out of context. Everything has to do with context, right? But just to give you another example, of course, the main photo behind the profile photo on your Facebook account also tells about where your dream is, where your heart is. This is your heartbeat. Mm-hmm. This is where your life is. That's where you'd like to be. You're not there, but you'd like to be there. Mm-hmm. So this is just an example about how these signals are telling a lot. But just listen to this. This is fascinating. Just going back to Russia and Saudi Arabia. In Russia, you'll notice they don't smile a lot. because you're very introvert. In Saudi Arabia, you'll notice that they don't have a lot of water and they don't have a lot of potted plants. Now, guess what? The emojis from those two countries are the emoji from Russia is a heart and a smile. The emoji from Saudi Arabia is a potted plant. The emoji for United Kingdom is a wink because they have this British strange, awkward type of humor, right? Emojis across the world is encapsulating an entire nation in just one little photo. Now, you wouldn't know that based on but you'll know that if you lived in the culture where you can see this is their express highway into people's emotional hearts by using one little emoji, right? So what you see is for the digital space is that you can analyze that, but it's only so far you can get, because remember, you're analyzing a person's color brochure of their own brand, and you don't learn a lot from that. You learn one side, which is where they're insecure or where they are secure. Then you go into the home, and that's where you see the flip side of everything. And remember, we spend a lot of time in homes, and I've seen some fascinating correlations. First of all, there's something called the perception room. I'm not even writing about this in the book. There's something called the perception room. Perception room is where you actually have your mirror of your Facebook account. And of course, you're not thinking about this
in a physical room in your house.
Yeah, you do. So that's where you have your coffee table book. So if you have a coffee table book, the room where it's based in is actually the room which you want to display the most to the world in order to show who you really are as a person. Now, if you have a large, colorful painting hanging in that room, you actually are very self-confident.
I'm like checking the boxes here as you're talking.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, I know what my perception room is. Yes, there is a very large painting there.
So now comes the evil part. Mark, you're not sitting in the perception room right now, are you?
No, I'm in my office.
Because then I'll be very evil now. Because what I'll also say is, if you find a huge bookshelf in the perception room, a large one, packed with books, it actually means that you, as a person, never really felt that you're literate enough. In fact, that you kind of want to compensate for the fact that you were not reading enough as a child, or you didn't have a strong enough or high education. And that's your way to compensate for that. Remember, everything is out of balance, right?
Yeah.
But you can take. I mean, a funny story. The other day, I went to a fancy hotel in Switzerland, and I met the owner. And I mean, this is a fancy hotel, $300 million in renovation for this hotel, right? I met this owner, which had 5 hotels, as you do, of those, and he had this huge bunch of keys hanging from his wrist, and it was so funny because this whole hotel have no keys. It's only these swipe cards to every room, including the back rooms. And these keys actually indicate that you're deeply insecure. So this guy owning 5 hotels, billions of dollars, have a bunch of keys, which for me, when I talked to him, I immediately knew this guy's very insecure. And sure enough, the first he had to do was to brag about everything. And then I said to him, listen, this is fantastic. I'm going to ask you a strange question. In your childhood and whatever, what did your dad say to this? And he paused for a second. He said, no one has ever asked me that question before. He said, he never recognized me. And that was a bunch of keys. So it just gives you a sense of how every signal we send is these emotional DNAs, offline, online, wireless.
Well, okay. So let's kind of drill it down to real business here. You are the brand whisperer. You are like this sociological savant. What can we take from this book? What can we take from the stories in the book that can be practical applications for our own marketing efforts in our businesses? I mean, one of the things I certainly learned was to get out and talk to people and watch people. And I mean, that's something that I've written about in my blog for years, is to get out and meet with your customers and look at their stores and see how they're using the products. But what would you like people to take away from the book? What would be something very rewarding for you that people could use from the book?
Well, I'm going to tell you there is so much stuff I can sort of drill into. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of stuff, because else it will be a 10-hour blab here, right? The first thing is, and it seems so straightforward, but it's not. I mean, today when we're waiting for someone in a bar, we have an appointment with them and they're not showing up. After 2 minutes, we'll grab our phones and do something with it. Anything with it, just to show like we're not a complete loser. And in that second, as we do that, we're also sending two signals. We're sending one signal to the world, I don't want to talk to you. Second, to ourselves, we're not present anymore. Boredom is the best creative tool in the world. If I'm bored, it forces me to stimulate my own mind. It forces me to observe people. And as that happens, I also create great brands. I learn about consumers. So the first thing we have to do is to become more present. And more present then means to move in with consumers and spend time with consumers. I mean, I did a speech the other day for a lot of executives, around 3,000 executives here in New York City. And I asked them, how many of you have lived with the consumer in their homes over the last year? And 2 out of 3,000 people raised their hands. So the first piece of advice is spend time with those strange people which happen to be paying your salary every day, because they are your lifeblood. They are our lifeblood. Number one. Number two, a lot of interesting conclusions. One of them is Paco Underhill, which, by the way, I'm doing a show with tomorrow. I think about the same time, actually, where we're doing a hangout. Paco Underhill is the author of Why We Buy, one of the best-selling books of all time in that category. And he is an anthropologist living with people and understanding how they shop in supermarkets. Now, he said to me, so funny, I moved away from Denmark in Northern Europe when I was 27 of age, and 20 years of age. And as I came back around 20 years later, he said to me, listen, Martin, you walk very unstructured in this country. He said, you just walk all over the place. Now, I've lived in the country for 27 years. I've never seen this before. And he had to tell me that. So why could he tell me that? Because he came from outside. If you're too close to the forest, you can't see the trees. And I realized that you have to come as an outsider into a culture to really understand it. That means that as you spend time with consumers, the first thing you do is to get a haircut. You go down to the hairdresser and you have a haircut and you talk to the hairdresser about the situation, about his life, about the neighbors, about the problems, about the troublemakers, all that stuff. And suddenly you get the sense of the community. You talk to the church leader, you talk to the football players, you talk to all those people who have authority in the local community. And then you start to know things. And then you move into the home of consumers and you spend 2 hours, for example. And what you do is you observe every clue. Every piece of small data, you write it down, you take a ton of photos. But what you also do is you go to the photo album. It may be they have an offline photo album or an iPhoto album, and you flick through it. And then suddenly you'll start to see the frequency of things. Hey, that person is appearing a lot. That person is not there at all. Why is there a gap of 3 months? What happens there? Why do you take so many photos of that dog? And that will show the outer balances. And those outer balances, you then correlate with what's happening in the home. Now you go around in the home, you explore things. And what I'm telling you right now is the process, but it's also what you should do. And it costs nothing to do, but it teaches you a lot. So this is the second thing. Third, there's so many trends you can tap into now. One of the things I'm talking a lot about now is transformation, or rather the lack of it in our world. I mean, Mark, I want you to be honest now. What was the first thing you touched this morning when you woke up?
Oh, you know that answer.
Good looking.
Well, I don't want to make. I want to keep.
Remember, your wife is.
I want to keep this G-rated. So I'll be semi-honest. No, the first thing I touched, I got up and it was my iPad.
And your wife is recording. Yeah, seriously. Right, this is the issue. We touch our phones at the first thing.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we actually at work. So we at work 1 minute after we woke up. In the old days, you would go through the whole ritual of preparing yourself, the ritual of breakfast, the ritual of on the way to the car, the ritual, in the work. Today, it's one big thing. We're never shutting down our brain. We never transform. Now, the way it's reflected in our lives is, when did you must reboot your computer? We don't restart our computer anymore because it's mirroring our brains. That means we don't shut down our brain. We don't transform our brain. Now, what it means is that suddenly we get slower, we get more fizzy, we are not as active as we should be. So transformation, or the lack of it, is the biggest opportunity for brands in this world right now. Brands which can help you to transform into another lifestyle, which can help you to change your moment. I mean, I love to stand in an elevator here in New York City and watch people rushing into the elevators. And I count the number of people doing this sigh, because that is the last second of transformation that day. It's the connection between, should I use my phone? No, I'm not. No, I know it doesn't work. I'll try anyway. I'll give up. No, it doesn't work. That is the second we have. That's it. That's the reason why pour over coffees is a crazy phenomenon. Very big here in New York City. We prepare the coffee, it takes 8 minutes. It's crazy popular. People love it because it is their little 8 minutes of transformation. So fast food is slow food now. That means brands will start to transform. That's the third thing. I can continue on and on and on.
Let me ask you one thing. Define for me what you mean by transform. Does it mean aspire to be different, to be bolder, to be more liked? I mean, what do you mean by the personal transformation we have each day?
It's a good question, and I'm glad that you're raising it. Have you ever been to the cinema where you watched a movie and where you left? It was such an amazing movie. It was so captivating. You left and you just had to wake up after it because you had to get into the real world again. Have you tried that moment?
Sure.
Yeah. That is transformation. Mm-hmm. When did you have that moment? Think about it for a second.
Okay.
When did you have that moment the last time? Just think about it for a second, because I can tell you when I had it the last time. That was a long time ago. I don't have it anymore because we are so bombarded with information anymore. So we have this smooth ride of data, information, and overload that we never really transform from one feeling to another. Mm-hmm. We just blend. And that means our filter is completely on all the time. We never wake up between those zones. Does it make sense?
Yeah, quite interesting. Quite interesting. Very thought-provoking. Well, it's unbelievable how time has really gone by here. What a fascinating conversation. Let me end with one last question for you, because we've been talking about small data. This is the wonderful new book that Martin has written and is launching this week. So what is the role in your world of brand building? Where does big data come in? Does the work begin with big data and move to small data? Does it start with small data, move to big data? How do the two intersect today for you?
Well, great question. And I think the reality is very, very simple. Big data is like a haystack, and you have to find the needle. And you can only find the needle by having a hypothesis. So big data is all about seeking correlations between numbers. Small data is all about seeking a correlation to find out the reason why. I'll give you an example of that. In 2002, Lego had a huge problem. The company was really struggling. And at that year, they were looking into the big data, which actually were concluding at that stage that the instant gratification generation had arrived. And actually, those kids would not play with Legos anymore. So Lego went into panic. They changed the size of the bricks from these tiny bricks to huge building blocks. The average building time went down dramatically. And in 2003, up to the Christmas holiday season, the sales went down 30%. That was the moment where Lego was close to a bankrupt. Now, at that stage, Lego did something remarkable. They went into the homes of consumers across Europe. They went into, among others, a young kid, 11-year-old German kid. And they asked him one simple question: what are you most proud of? And this kid, he paused for a second.
This is the skateboarder.
It is the skateboarder, exactly. And this skateboarder, he replied back, he said, that thing. And he pointed at the shelf. And there you had an old, worn pair of sneakers, smelly. And he took them down and said that thing. And Lego was completely baffled about it. They said, why? He said, because I'm this, as you're saying, I'm the skateboarder in town. And in fact, I'm the best. And I'll tell you why. Because I can slide down this skateboard and exactly the right angle. And you can see that wear on my shoe. This is my trophy, 11 years old. And that was the second where Lego realized the power of small data. because they now were concluding one simple line. The kids, if they're put into the driver's seat and they can run ahead with storytelling, time is not in an essence anymore. Suddenly, time is out of the picture and they will spend thousands of hours on playing Lego. And out of that, of course, later on, you had the Lego movie coming out, which was number 2 here in the United States last year. But it's also a story about how the Lego movie helped them to put the kids in the driver's seat. It changed the size from the big bricks to the tiny building blocks. And Lego is today number 1. And this is the difference between big and small data. Small data is really these seemingly insignificant observations we make in our lives. The problem is we don't see them anymore. The problem is we don't see them because we're not present. And the problem is we don't take it serious. And that's the reason why I'm so glad that you and I are talking right now, because my dream, if you ask me what my dream is personally, my dream is to make small data become a movement, because I'm sick and tired of creativity disappearing out of our lives. I'm sick and tired of judging everything based on numbers. And I'm sick and tired of people not being present anymore, because that is not good for us. It's not good for you. It's not good for I. Where we learn the most is when we get our hands dirty and we see the reality. I mean, I lived in homes in the favelas in Brazil. I've lived in mud literally in Nigeria. I've been to Iran, to Iraq, to all those different countries and tried the reality. And when you do that, you get so many creative ideas and you pick up so much small data. And then when you put these small data into the context of big data, like 2 people dancing in a dance, then suddenly you get something beautiful out of it. So I'm not banning big data. I'm just saying they can help us to create the correlation, but they certainly can't find the causation.
All I can say is amen.
Thank you.
That was one of the greatest, most relevant speeches I've heard in a long time. That was absolutely fantastic. And what a beautiful way to close out our little session today. And Martin, I just can't thank you enough. This was absolutely so inspirational and energizing for me. I know it will be also for many others who get to see this. Tell people where they can find out more about you and your book online.
Well, first of all, of course, I'll hope that everyone would buy the book. It is the book I'm probably most proud of any of the books I've written. And I'm not saying this as a bad advertising speech. I really, really mean it, because it's very close to my heart. You can find me on martinlindstrom.com, or you can go into facebook.com/martinlindstrom. I'm also on Twitter. It's @martinlindstrom, or even on LinkedIn, which is Lindstrom Company or Company Lindstrom, something like that. You can at least search for me. And you'll find me in, of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all those indie bookstores across the country, which we really have to support as well. So you can find me out there in the space. And I really hope that everyone will send me a note or let me know what you think about the book. I would love to have a dialogue.
Wonderful, Martin. Thank you so much again, and best wishes with your book.
Thanks a lot. Take care.